VINCENT. Put you to bed when you've had too much to drink. Oh, could be a man who grows old with you.
I don't hate anybody. I'm not a hate monger. More of a hate stylist, if you will. Thank you very much.
Oh, the comedy stylings of
Isn't
Mr.
it?
Tom Hanks.
But it wasn't violent.
No.
He could have.
But there was a punch that he had at the
Oh,
end
a
of that.
punchline. Okay, he beat me to it.
I'm Mark.
I'm Tom.
And we are the
Cinemaniacs.
Cinemaniacs.
So, I believe you, as is your wont, were engaged in some rather nefarious extracurricular activity this weekend. Were you
It's
not?
easy for you to say. A cinematic excursion.
Okay.
A little bit of Cinemania on the road this weekend. So you know I like to drive it.
I do.
And you know I generally like trashy movies. I love quality films too. But if given the choice, something trashy that shows me something I've never seen before, I will lean towards. So I go to various drive-in events that are these Dusk Till Dawn shows that are all on film and all old movies.
And as long as it's within the continental United States, you
no,
don't
no.
care, right?
I started going to this show at the Riverside Drive-In in Vandergrift, Pennsylvania, about an hour or so from Pittsburgh, 8 years ago.
Okay.
And it's a great, fun weekend filled with cool people and cool movies. And then another event started in, I love to say it, Coxsackie, New York every year that we also go to. It's like an hour and a half away, 2 hours away. That's a shorter distance. And then this year, another show popped up at the Pike Drive-In in central Pennsylvania. So that was only 6 hours away. One more show popped up this last weekend at the Mahoning Drive-In in Layton, Pennsylvania, which is about hour and a half from Philadelphia.
Okay.
And it was 5.5 hour drive for me, which this all sounds crazy, but once you drive 10 hours both ways, 5 hours is nothing, and it's the same route.
Right,
so
that's
it's
true.
just like I'm becoming very comfortable with this. So I decided to go to this thing. It was the same movies 2 nights. It was this movie called Gates of Hell, also known as City of the Living Dead, a Lucio Fulci Italian zombie movie from 1980. Awful. The original Nightmare on Elm Street.
Okay.
A film called Dr. Butcher, M.D., which is trashy Italian zombie cannibal movie. And the original Tales from the Crypt, which we
Wow.
ran at a Spooktacular a few years
Yeah.
back. And all of them on film, $10 a carload, which to me, I was the carload.
Right.
Insert joke here. And they were cool if you slept in your car after the movie. So I left Keene at about 10 a.m. I got to the drive-in at about 5, and that was with an hour break for lunch. And I left the next morning before 7, and I was home by noon to start seeing movies here in Keene. This place was amazing. It was run by, I guess, some fairly young people have bought this drive-in. The place has been open every summer since 1948.
Wow.
And they're still all filmed. They haven't gone digital yet. This event was partially to raise money for digital projection upgrades. And from what I'm told, they may actually become an entirely retro drive-in next year.
Okay.
Which means this is insane, I may actually become a regular at a Pennsylvania drive-in next year.
Would they be retaining their prints, or are they going to go digital but still show retro?
You know, I don't know. The theater other two that I go to in New York and Pennsylvania
Right.
for these annual shows, they've maintained the one in New York is a 4-screen drive-in, so they kept film setup for one of their screens in addition to a digital setup, as does the drive-in near Pittsburgh. This place, I have no idea what they're going to do. They're a single screener, so my guess is they would keep a film setup and their digital.
Right, so
They have platters and reels, if that means anything to anybody at home. Reels means you have 2 projectors, and every 20 minutes you have to switch from one projector to the other, and you're constantly changing the reels to get through a movie. Platters is you splice all of the film reels together on one big platter that feeds onto another platter. So it's like a big film loop. I'm telling you, you know this. So in case
Right,
you were
but-
wondering. So I think if they got rid of one of those systems at the Mahoning Drive-In, they could put it digital and it would
Right,
not.
so you're
then the
covered.
projection booth was giant. So anyway, I had a great time.
Cool.
And if I'm a little bleary or fuzzy of headed, it's because I covered several hundred miles in and
Well,
around talking about what we're talking
Viewers
about
are familiar
tonight.
with this, so they'll notice no difference.
Yeah, if you are interested in this at all, go to the Saturday Fright Special Facebook page and you can see the pictures I took.
Sounds
Oh,
great.
one other thing. This
Yeah.
is why this place is so great. Okay, it was the same movies Friday and Saturday night.
Right.
One thing that differed is each night before the movies, there was a different band that played live under the screen before the show.
Okay.
So there's this band called the Cave Women who were 3 guys actually, psych rock band that played for like a half hour. At the same time they were playing, and they were good, was a troupe of fire dancers. So they were spinning fire around and throwing things on fire up in the air, and it was the coolest thing for at no additional cost before the movies even started.
Right.
So then in between the movies, the fire dancers would do their thing to music and
Okay.
stuff. So anyway, I ramble. That's what I do.
Yeah, sounds
did
like
you
a
see?
good
Did you
weekend.
see any movies this
I
weekend?
did see some
Did you
movies
now?
this weekend. Probably most of them the same that you saw.
Probably.
Only saw one at Keene Cinemas, and we thank our friends at Keene Cinemas, Joe and Suzanne and Trevor and everybody like that. But one that I did saw had Melissa McCarthy is a single mom who is going through a difficult divorce and has to work all the time, and so is looking for somebody to take care of her kid. And wouldn't you think the most ideal person to take care of your kid would be an old, curmudgeonly ex-war guy who basically spends a lot of time at bars and racetracks? Well, Bill Murray turns out to be this young man's babysitter, and the young man thinks that Bill Murray is just St. Vincent.
I do.
Okay, yes. What else do you remember?
I liked it a lot.
Okay.
You know, seeing that trailer, I didn't know what to expect. I know it's an indie movie,
Right.
So I didn't know if it was going to be quirky or weird or more serious than a comedy. And this is much more a straight-ahead comedy than I expected it would be.
Okay.
I guess I was expecting more of a mix. And there is drama in the film, and I think it's fairly well played. And there are tear-jerking moments in the film, but for the most part, it is pretty consistently funny, I thought.
Okay.
And it was nice to see this with a sizable enough crowd at the matinee I saw it with yesterday, where you got a sense of a crowd laughing at something. Because I choose to go to the movies at matinees kind of intentionally because there are fewer people there. And one of the great things about seeing a comedy in a theater with a group of people is that just, you know,
Right.
when laughters cover up the next line or two of dialogue and stuff like that. And for some reason, I specifically remember that happening during moments with Bill Murray in Tootsie when I was a kid.
Okay.
Funny enough, when I think about laugh lines, that in Ghostbusters. So I thought Bill Murray was very good in this. He plays a little of the drama.
Mm-hmm.
He plays a lot of the Bill Murray kind of curmudgeon. Melissa McCarthy, who I don't like in general in
Right.
comedies. The one time I enjoyed her in Identity Thief was when she dropped the comedy and she got serious for a moment.
Yep.
And that's her tone for most of this movie, and she's very good at that. I wish she'd stop making comedies, and I'd probably enjoy her work a lot more. So I really like this. It's crude at times. It's not one for the kids, certainly, but I enjoyed its crudeness and its roughness around the edges.
It is
I guess I would say.
PG-13, which surprised me, because I was expecting it to be an R going into it. But
I mean, there's not a lot of things that are terribly explicit. There's the first time you see Naomi Watts in the film, that's probably not for kids.
Right.
But otherwise, it's mostly implied
Right.
misdeeds that he does.
Yes. In as much as she's a Russian immigrant,
A lady of the night.
lady of the night who happens to be pregnant and all of that. Yeah, so her character is interesting. I agree with your comment about seeing a movie with lots of people, especially comedies, because that's more fun. My theater was only about a quarter to a third full, and that might have added to the feeling that I just thought this was really boring.
Really?
Yeah, I thought this
Wow.
was a real lame first. I have the feeling that the writer or the director, this is the first time, and so we're really gonna. It just felt like it tried too hard. Here's Bill Murray. Let's play on his delivery. I thought McCarthy was okay. She didn't have a lot to do. The kid was. I mean, performances overall were okay, but I just thought the material tried too hard for me, and I didn't find it either terribly funny or terribly serious, and it just, for me, missed the mark on both.
It's funny
Sorry.
because I, thinking of this as an indie movie,
Right.
I expected it was going to take a really dark turn, and
Okay.
it takes a couple of kind of dark turns, but I didn't think this was we're going to be a smiling at the end kind of movie.
Right.
And I was really happy that it was. And as I'm watching this, I'm thinking, well, if this was a Hollywood movie, I know how it would turn out. And it went that way.
Right.
And I was happy that it did, because overall I liked the kid, and you kind of like Bill Murray despite how much of a dirtbag he is in this movie. And I don't want to give anything away, but it ends in a good place for everybody, and I kind of liked that.
I thought that was a cheat in many respects.
Well,
I thought it wasn't gutsy enough to choose one way or the other. Murray has about 2/3 of the way through plot point number 2, has an interesting thing occur to him that changes a lot of relationships. I thought that was. A plot device really to give Murray the opportunity to get that Oscar buzz going, and I didn't think he did terribly well. I sound like I'm really beating it over the head. I thought it was like a 3 or a 4 out of 10.
Wow.
Certainly not bad, and if you're a fan of either one of them, either McCarthy or Murray, and certainly I'm a fan of Murray, and he's what kept it interesting for me. If he hadn't been in it, I think I would have been even more down on this, but I was just really disappointed in all aspects. I can see probably if I had a better audience with it and was getting a sense of what people were finding funny, but for me it just felt a little flat. So
that's the thing about seeing it. I think every movie is better in a theater, and especially comedies. Sure. I think if I was not as much into it, well, see, that's weird because I've seen comedies that I've hated and the audience has loved, and I just sit there thinking, what is it about
What's their
this?
problem?
So maybe that wouldn't have made a difference for you. I think that's the thing. Well, it's a rare occasion that we split.
Well, here's
on the
one.
Program.
There you go.
It's the big split. It had to happen sooner or later, folks.
And unfortunately, that's all we had at the theater, so we have nothing else about which to argue.
No,
at least in the theaters.
The relative merits of Italian zombie movies, perhaps.
Can't argue those.
That's what I spent my time doing. So then we move on to thanking our friends at Video Headquarters for this next roster, and this roster plus 2. But these 2, I almost guarantee they're going to have there in one form or another. So we thank them for everything we are about to discuss. Well, maybe we thank them, maybe we don't. We thank them for giving you the opportunity to see these movies. How about that? So first up is a film starring Eric Bana, the once Hulk, Australian actor playing an American cop who's on the trail of a series of bizarre incidents where people are exhibiting very strange and creepy behavior. Are they possessed? Are they on drugs? Are they crazy? Eric Bana will decide and attempt to deliver us from evil.
Yes.
Ooh, creepy stuff.
Maybe.
So this is an interesting duck. This is a mix of police...
Based on a true story.
I'm sorry.
It must be good.
Ooh. Based on a true story. I did not have time, due to my extracurricular activities, to look at the extras on this disc. And there are a few featurettes. And anytime something is based on a true story, I always want to immediately say, okay, well, what's the deal? What's the truth? And I did
There was a cop in New York.
Yeah, I know. There's a cop in New York who has claimed to have dealt with people who were demonically possessed.
Right.
And after I saw this in the theater, I didn't bother to look that up to test the validity of that claim, and I did not see if one of the 3 or 4 features on the DVD was that, or if they were just production featurettes. So can't speak to that truth or not, although my own personal belief, no. So basically, Bana's on the case of these various things that are going on, and it's like a cop drama, a bit of a mystery, and then ultimately it becomes an exorcism movie.
Right.
And to me, we've seen a lot of these in the last few years. Mm-hmm. You've got your zombie movies and you've got your somebody being possessed movies. And to me, they're all the exact same thing. When it comes to the exorcism scene, it's somebody reading from the Bible. It's somebody next to them. It's like it's just how slightly can we alter the exorcism scene in The Exorcist and get away with it. So that all was just silly to me. And this is just, it's very dark. It's very aggressive kind of movie, dingy, and I didn't have any interest in it for the most part. You know, and then when it gets to the exorcism thing, it's like, here we go again. I've seen this a million times. All it made me think of is The Exorcist 3 from 1989, 90, somewhere in there with George C. Scott, which was not really, I guess it's loosely connected to The Exorcist, but it was about a cop investigating a series of murders, and it deals with possession, and it kind of ties into the original movie a little bit. I would highly recommend that over this.
Right, I think I'd agree.
And it's not so old that I think it would be terribly dated. It's less flashy and edgy than this movie is. So if you're a modern audience member or a younger person who might be interested in this movie, it might do the trick for you. Okay. But me, who has seen a lot of this kind of stuff, it didn't do anything significantly different or better to make me recommend this over Exorcist 3 from 1990.
Right. What this one for me had going for it was Eric Bana. I like him a lot. I think he's a good actor. He's strong enough to take a lead role. This one tried to and they push this. They advertise this as exactly what you were saying is, ooh, is it a cop drama or is it paranormal and all that stuff. Bana's subplot as a cop with a new wife and everything is just kind of lost on me. So much of the stuff, again, it's based, and one of the things they push is based on a true story. So it's modern day, it's based on a true story. We get to this exorcism scene toward the end that just, no pun intended, all hell breaks loose. Oh. And all I can think of is nobody's got a video camera around there. We have no real evidence. And so it's just so thoroughly unbelievable that all of this went on and there's no proof or whatever, that it's so off the deep end with its paranormal stuff that, and you know me, I love paranormal stuff and I love horror movies just like you do, that I just found this too hard to believe.
And the weaving of the doors break on through throughout the movie was just silly.
Right.
I mean, love the doors. Cool to hear that in the theater at the end.
Strange.
But it was just like, it was, to me, it made me think about the new Battlestar Galactica show, how they weaved in all along the Watchtower, and I just thought that was dumb. So anyway, you were saying.
Well, no, it's just exactly that. I mean, I don't think this movie knew what exactly to do, which way to play it, and it's certainly none of it is jokey. It's not comedic.
No, it's played straight.
Yeah, but some of it almost comes off like that. So if you're a fan of Bana, and I am, I thought it was worth enough to get through. I could recommend it as for that reason on video. But if you're really looking for an exorcist flick, or if you're really looking for a detective cop flick, it's neither one of those. So yeah, I wasn't crazy about Deliver Us from Evil either.
Sometimes multi-genre-rational films, if you will, are very exciting because it's like, wow, it's a Western,
you try to please
and
everybody.
it's a musical or whatever. And sometimes they don't quite work.
Right, you try to please everybody and you end up pleasing nobody.
Yeah, so I'm sure there will be some people for whom this is a decent Friday night rental.
Right.
I wouldn't say to go out and blind buy it, but I don't know. It wasn't for me.
True.
Speaking of movies featuring musicals, because I mentioned musical a minute ago.
You did, as a matter of fact. And there's music in this movie. As a matter of fact, Keira Knightley plays a young songstress, songwriter, who is in love with her beau in college, and they land a pretty potentially sweet music deal with a major label in New York. But the trappings of fame start to break apart their relationship until such time as Keira Knightley meets up with Mark Ruffalo. Throwing a lot of names around here. Should be interesting, we'll have to see. And Ruffalo has the opportunity to let Keira Knightley begin again.
Was it exceptionally good? I didn't see it.
The whole movie probably wasn't. What this does have going for it, besides Keira Knightley, whom I like, and they let her speak the way she normally speaks, so that's kind of interesting. I like Ruffalo a lot. He's not strong enough and he really is kind of the lead.
He's got a very subtle way about him.
Right, and we needed somebody to take over this film because everybody's kind of laid back. It's fun. You see kind of the behind-the-scenes making of little docs and things like that, like with those guys there toward the end and when they're down in the subway. Those are kind of interesting for us, I think, in particular, because we're involved in filmmaking. But this one really is aiming for a very small slice of the audience, and that's the kind of indie rock band video kind of audience. If you're in that, I think you're going to like this. If you like Knightley, I think you're going to like this. She's in it a lot. She has an opportunity. I have to assume she's singing her own stuff because not only, that really kind of seems to be the vogue thing to do for actors and actresses. And she's, assuming that's her, has a nice voice. But I'm not really into this type of music. I didn't have anybody I really wanted to cheer for. And so this one, while I'm not, boy, talk about being curmudgeonly, I'll star in the sequel to St. Vincent. I can't really recommend this with the exception of those two real focused audience spots right there. It was enjoyable enough, but I don't think I'll be watching it again.
Is it a little too indie for your average renter?
It's not so much indie because I think for me, and you're right to associate that as you did with St. Vincent, indie to me means doesn't have to kowtow to the traditional, either be it 3-act structure, the Hollywood system, and this doesn't, and I thought that was one of its strengths, but it also indicates kind of a quality level of production, and this had a higher quality level. It looks good, it looks nice, it sounds good. I think it's really just kind of the topic. If what you see, it's certainly WYSIWYG, it's what you see is what you get. And if that type of either the actors in it or the story seem interesting, you're going to get that. That's just not my cup of tea.
Okay,
sorry.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I didn't watch it, so no comment. I will comment, though,
Yes?
profuselessly, as a guy once said incorrectly. on camera. Wasn't me. A documentary. We have here a documentary. This documentary posits. It's hard to say anything other than just the title. So why don't I just cut to the chase so we have more time to talk about this. This documentary is entitled America, Imagine a World Without Her.
America.
This film, by the way,
Yes.
before we get into it, does not answer that question.
That's true, it doesn't.
This film's title, America, Imagine a World Without Her, it starts off talking about the Revolutionary War and George Washington.
Well, we shouldn't even exist
and
for that.
You see an alternate reality where a sniper takes down George Washington, and then they show those cool effects shots of all the monuments washing away. And that's the last that's ever mentioned of what would the world would be like without her.
Yep.
Because going into this, I thought, this might be like an alternative history kind of thing. And then it started setting up these different... what's the best word for it? These different beefs people have with America from within. And I thought, maybe it's going to posit, if this never happened, and then no, it doesn't. To cut to the chase, this is you're looking at my finger. I'm not going to go for that other one, that other finger. This is a piece
That's what it does to America.
of conservative propaganda.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily insulting the movie. That's just being as clear as possible. Basically, this film takes a look at American shame, they call it. People who are like, capitalism is evil, and America was evil for doing all these things around the world and all that other stuff. And it tries to refute those points through a lot of historical reenactment, some pretty nice looking, either shot for the film or stock footage, some pretty nice cinematography here and there, and then interviews with experts. But so it's like, okay, you have, and basically they find the most radical examples of people who hate this country, who live here, who are from. I really don't want to get too political on this show. I want everybody just to like us. But they find the most radical examples of ethnic groups who have a beef with our past as a country. Yep. They have them make a statement. Then he finds somebody who makes a statement that says, oh, no, you're all wrong. Next, and they move on to the next thing. So there's no discussion, there's no interviewing of multiple experts about everything. A lot of this attacks Howard Zinn, who wrote a book called The People's History of the United States, which in the opinion of this filmmaker, was a very biased and inaccurate depiction of all the evils that America has done to itself and other countries over the years.
Right.
And my attitude about all this is, yes, America has done bad things in the past, and we should look at that and recognize them as such and move forward and say, okay, we did awful things to get where we are. Let's never do that again, and make sure other people don't.
Right.
This film is very disjointed and segmented, and it goes all over the place, and it basically hits everything any conservative person who hates the left wants to see. So there's Obama bashing, there's Hillary Clinton bashing, there's Hollywood bashing, they make sure they get a boot in on Michael Moore in there, and all this kind of stuff. And it's if you are from the opposite political viewpoint of this film, it's kind of laughable.
Right. Yeah.
So I almost shut this off because it was making me so mad. I don't look at the boxes before we watch these, so I really didn't know what this was about. Had I looked at the box cover where the largest one-word critical quote pull was from Rush Limbaugh, that probably would have tipped me off in a pretty big way. And apparently this filmmaker had made that film 2016, which was some anti-Obama documentary that was popular with half of the aisle. And so this film kind of continues in that respect. It's about an hour and a half, though to me it felt a lot longer than that. It's fairly well made in terms of a documentary that wants to persuade you something, but if you look at it with much of a critical eye, it kind of doesn't hold up.
Right.
And I wish I had more time and interest to research more of what's being said in this film and pro and con and to see how accurate it is. But a lot of it is like, so people think America should be ashamed for making slaves out of African people. Well, there were slaves that were brought over here who went on to become slave owners, so slavery was okay. I mean, it's like, what? And it's just like, oh, we shouldn't feel bad for massacring Native Americans because Native Americans massacred each other. So that makes what we did okay. And it was ridiculous. So I hope people aren't going to this film blind and completely swayed by what it has to say because it is so clearly one-sided.
Right.
Most documentaries have a point of view. That's something everybody should be aware of. But this one, maybe because it doesn't, this is where it's going to sound horrible. Maybe because I don't agree with that point of view, this seems more offensive to me. But it's just, I really hope schools don't start showing this thinking, this is a good history lesson.
Right.
So this 2016 is going to please people. It's going to preach to the choir.
Right.
If you are of the opposite spectrum, you're going to find it offensive and silly and dumb. And if you are on the side of this filmmaker, it's just going to reinforce your beliefs. So
I think part of what...
That's America.
Right. I
That
think
is America, actually.
I agree completely with everything you had to say. I went into this not knowing a whole lot about it, and the first couple of minutes where it is kind of positing, ooh, what would have happened if like none of this had
This could
really
be
occurred?
like an alternative history kind of
Right,
movie.
exactly. I was thinking, wow, this could be really interesting. And then you start getting the clearly, and once again, this is preaching to the choir. It's aimed quite clearly at the right-wing folks to kind of be happy that you're on the bandwagon. So once those started coming up, I could just kind of disengage in my interest because I could very clearly tell, okay, this is a doc designed to do exactly that. That's okay. I continued to watch it, one, because I thought, for the most part, the production value was stunningly good. You talk about some wonderful cinematography.
It looks really good.
Fairly well cut and everything like that. Performances overall in the reenactments, they're okay. It builds and builds and builds, as you say, on the reenactments, and that gets a little tiring. And you're right, that they very clearly... They're slamming everything that they can on the left side of things, and their defense is one guy just picked out of the hat to say
Right.
one thing and moving on.
Right.
So, again, hopefully, what a frightening thought if this is used in schools as a way to educate kids or anything like that about quote-unquote history. I have to hope that our educators are smarter than that not to do that. So I did laugh out loud at just how disinterested they were in presenting both sides of things. I mean, quite occasionally it was just really funny about how, oh, here's the truth of it, moving on.
Right.
But I can't help but be impressed with the way it was put together. I thought it was pretty good looking. So if you're of the right-wing bent, I think you may very well love this, and it'll help support some of your ideals. If you're of the left-wing bent, it'll either tick you off or you'll find it extremely funny. But so that's America. That's what we can say about America. In many respects, both the film and the...
Ain't
and
that
the,
America?
You
and me?
Country, as it may be.
No little pink houses
Right.
in this film, though.
Moving on to other things that may be bad about America. It's pretty tough when your daughter is kidnapped by a drug czar who wants to exact some problems with you. And if you happen to be a former assassin who has just retired, you may have to come right out of business if you can take care of the prince. Boy, I could have sworn we saw this exact same movie. And as a matter of fact, when I put it in, because Bruce Willis is in it for 30 seconds at the beginning and a minute and a half at the end. And I'm like, whoa, and you reminded me. I've seen this movie. 50 Cent producing it and all that stuff, and you came up with it. I forget the name of it.
I don't remember. It was Bruce Willis and Henry Cavill,
Yes.
who's the new Superman. And it was like Bruce Willis was a spy and Cavill's his son. It wasn't a terrible movie.
No,
was
it
an
wasn't
action movie
bad.
set in Spain, which I believe Bruce Willis took it to get,
Just to get it
a
to-
vacation out of that.
Right.
And this is another one of those, when the credits started, for whatever reason, and I didn't even know 50 Cent was in this.
Right.
I got this vibe, and I'm like, I wonder if this is one of those movies 50 Cent produced so he could be in a
he
movie.
could be in a
Because there was one with De Niro
Yep.
that was not very good. And how do these people get in it? It's because, well, 50 Cent is rich and he wants to be in movies. I don't think he had anything to do with producing this. He's just in it briefly.
Right.
And the man is not an actor.
That's very true, very
and
obvious.
with every role, that becomes clearer and clearer. The big names in the box cover are Jason Patric, who is the star of this movie. And it's cool to see him again because he's been away for quite a while. He was kind of a big thing in the late 80s, early 90s, and he
Right.
kind of went away. John Cusack, who's in like 2 scenes. He's in it for maybe 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes.
Yep.
And Bruce Willis, who's the bad guy and very barely in this movie. I thought this was an okay vigilante action movie. I mean, I wouldn't, as we also often say, I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't blind buy it. It's the kind of thing that if you were looking for something to watch, or if
Right.
it was on TV, it's passable. Because once it starts, I was surprised how early it kicked in. Like, Jason Patric is this mechanic,
Right.
and he's doing like a FaceTime thing with his daughter, and then he can't get a hold of her the next day, and he just goes looking for her
Right.
and starts, pardon my French, kicking ass and taking names, and not even bothering to take names.
Not even
a lot of
taking many
times.
names, exactly.
And I'm like, ooh, it's going to be one of these movies.
Right.
And to me, being a fan of the vigilante movies, this reminds me of 3 movies. A movie called Hardcore with George C. Scott, where he
Right.
plays a minister whose daughter disappears into the adult film world of the mid-70s LA. Taxi Driver, which is a pretty similar movie too. And the most recent Equalizer film. In that there's this guy with a shadowy past, and you find out what his deal was. You know, he was made to kill. That's kind of a hint of that, which I'm sure was not on their minds when they made this because Equalizer hadn't come out yet.
Right.
But overall, it's very violent. The action is a little too much toward the shaky cam spectrum of things, unfortunately.
Okay.
But it's very brutal. There's a lot of bullets fired and people punched and slapped around, if you like that sort of thing. So I thought this was okay for a straight-to-video movie with a couple of name actors that nobody's ever probably going to watch.
Well, that's again, as you say, and I keep thinking the very first thing when I saw this was your mantra that, three major stars, but two really big ones, and you haven't seen this produced in the theaters. Something's amiss here. I basically agree with what you have to say. As a vigilante, action flick, I think this is perfectly passable. Patrick is okay. Willis is completely wasted. He's not even good in it.
He's really barely in it.
Yeah,
John Cusack seems like annoyed that he's there.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
So the two of them, I wish they'd cast somebody else and just tried to sell it. If it's a straight to video, just try to sell it on Patrick's. And I thought you could have done better because it seemed so obtrusive that these other two stars are in it, both so briefly and for such minor purposes. Patrick, I thought, didn't have a whole lot to do. I thought ultimately the material is the problem with this. We've seen it a zillion times. There's some scenes where like he'll go and meet up with some punk kid, and then somebody who knows the punk kid comes along and, this guy has so much respect for Patrick because we start learning about his past, and it's all just kind of silly. I don't think it was written for Patrick necessarily. I was thinking, well, whoever we have will play this. I just thought the material was a little lame. If we haven't seen a zillion revenge pictures, it's passable. So I can't say I felt I'm in such a bad mood this week. I can't say I felt ripped off of my hour and a half or so. So it wasn't that bad, but we've certainly named several other better films.
We're not afraid to name names on this show.
That's true.
I think had you come with me to a all-night drive-in show with Italian zombie movies,
I don't remember ever being asked.
You'd be filled with glee. I didn't think you'd want to sleep in a car.
Okay.
I didn't want to say I didn't think you would want to sleep in a car with me,
With
but
you.
that's what it would have to be because it's just our cars.
There it is.
2 seats.
There you go.
So that's all we have at Video Headquarters.
Yep.
Which is not to say that what we're about to talk about is not at Video Headquarters.
Because they are.
Because I know they are.
Yes.
We just happen to be referring to our own personal copies of these films. So I thought it would be cool, since we have such a light load, if we each picked a Halloween movie to talk about, because this show is airing the week of Halloween.
It is.
In these here United States. And let's not beat around the bush any longer.
I'll agree.
My film that I chose to pick to discuss is a very Halloween-y movie in title and subject matter. So here's a little backstory for you. John Carpenter makes a little movie called Halloween in 1978. It's huge. It arguably launches the slasher craze. 1981, that comes Halloween 2.
Right.
More of The Night He Came Home, which picks up exactly where Halloween ended,
Yep.
and it's more of Jamie Lee Curtis being stalked in and around a hospital by Michael Myers. 1983, 2 years later, comes Halloween 3. Everybody's like, ooh, more Michael Myers.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, the shape is back. No, actually, we're not going to do that. John Carpenter didn't want to do any more Halloween Michael Myers movies. He didn't even direct Halloween 2 because he didn't think it was appropriate or necessary. They decided, Universal, to create a series of films. Every Halloween there'd be a new film called Halloween whatever, and it would be a new original story.
Okay.
Public wasn't interested in that. So the public did not take to Halloween 3. It was dumped on video, played a lot on cable, and over the years it has built an audience. Mm-hmm. So I recommend this film to you, and we're going to watch a teaser and a trailer for it, to go into this knowing Michael Myers is not in the movie. This is a standalone story. This is Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. So the plot of this film is wonderful. This is why I thought about it. It is directly tied to the date of Halloween.
Right.
This evil toy maker is manufacturing these masks that have these little like computer chips on the back of them to kids, and they're promoting some big event on Halloween on TV for every kid to watch. Put on your masks and watch this. And the idea is that these masks are going to be triggered by the signal sent out through the TVs and activate that chip and kill kids, basically. It is horrible.
Right.
Basically, they test it out at one point, and it turns this kid's head into bugs. Like bugs are coming out all the eye holes and the mouth holes and everything. And the vibe of this, it's not done by John Carpenter.
Right.
The music I don't think he did the music for this. The music feels just like a John Carpenter movie with a lot of synth. The cinematography is done by, I believe, Dean Cundy, who did the other Halloween film, so it looks just like a John Carpenter film. A lot of John Carpenter rep players are in this, so it feels just like a Carpenter movie. It's just not a Michael Myers thing.
Right.
Originally, the story was written by, I want to say, Nigel Neal, who wrote the Quatermass films. It was rewritten after that, but the original story was by that. So it's got something to do with druids or pieces of Stonehenge and lasers and robots and all kinds of weird stuff. This is a weird movie.
Yes.
But it stands alone. There's no sequel. There's no prequel. There is no equal to Halloween 3. So if you're into 80s horror, it's got what you want. It's got nudity. It's got violence. It's got profanity. It may even have the use of alcohol. I really enjoy Halloween 3, and it's a perfect film to watch either on Halloween night or Halloween week.
Right, absolutely. I remember seeing this in the theaters, and again, it didn't. I don't think it even came to mind that for me, because it's engrossing enough that I don't recall thinking until the very end of the movie, wait a minute, Michael Myers wasn't in that movie, because the lead villain is so creepy, and he still stands out in my head. I see a picture of him, and he creeps me out. Tom Atkins is just a staple of 80s horror films. This had everything that you really needed, I guess with the exception of Michael Myers, but you didn't need him.
No.
Because this was, it's certainly a very different type of Halloween movie. But when you'd mentioned that this was going to be one of your favorites, I immediately understood why, because it's loads of fun.
And it's available on DVD and Blu-ray from a company called Scream Factory, which does amazing deluxe editions. So it's the movie, it's an audio commentary or two, it's behind the scenes, they go back and they visit the locations of the film now.
Right.
So it's a cool package if you like this movie and don't have it. And otherwise, Video Headquarters is your best friend in terms of seeing this.
Oh yes, got lots of available too. And picking another one out of the John Carpenter bailiwick, Donald Pleasance plays a priest, if you can believe it or not. Donald Pleasance, again, from Halloween as well.
Exactly.
How many times have we seen him in these? But plays a priest who finds out from one of his fellow priests that somebody's a-coming, and we might want to get some scientists together from all sorts of different venues and take a look at this weird green swirling liquid and try to find out what might be happening to our world, and if our world is still going to be around, because it looks like we might be paid a visit by the Prince of Darkness. Yeah, the Carpenter double feature, I guess. This one, certainly not so much scary. I think Halloween 3 is certainly scarier. This one has it's got a weird vibe. It's very, very slow, but it's very atmospheric. And not to build it up too much, but I really kind of got into the whole concept of, it's basically summoning Satan. And the idea that there are these doorways, strangely enough mirrors, if you can believe it, are the doorways between our world and Satan's, and there's a way you can summon them. And toward the end, there's some really creepy scenes with all of this. So this one takes a long time to build up. It's got some staple actors that you've seen in other Carpenter films, and it's certainly one of his less... he doesn't tend to make really scary stuff most of the time. I find them to be really atmospheric, The Thing.
The Fog's pretty
Halloween.
creepy.
The Fog's pretty creepy, but this one I think of all of Carpenter's for me is kind of the most atmospheric and creepy, and so Prince of Darkness was one that you don't usually think of when you think of horror films, and that was my recommendation.
It's much lesser known. It's not one of his all-stars,
right?
That gets marketed and merchandised very much. This is one that I've seen a couple of times over the years, and it's never really
doesn't really click with you.
It's never clicked, but I thinking back, I don't know if I've ever seen it in widescreen.
Okay.
Or if I did, it was on a 4x3 monitor, and his movies are widescreen, so it was probably this thin ribbon across an old TV set. So I need to see this again. This is another one that Scream Factory has out, and I know somebody who has a copy of it. I'm open to seeing it again because I just like the John Carpenter atmosphere, the way he shoots and edits, and the synth scores and everything.
Yep,
And
it's got all that.
Interesting cast. Jameson Parker of TV's Simon & Simon is the lead. Maybe not the strongest lead, really. I think that may have been part of my beef with it when I
He's
saw
not
it.
terribly strong,
But it got Alice Cooper in a small role.
Yep, Alice Cooper's in that. A couple other people, staple actors that you've seen in Carpenter films are a lot of fun. So this one has a little comedy, creepy stuff, nothing really super scary, but just very atmospheric, which is what I liked about it.
Well, those are two very interesting, if I may tout my own choice, films for Halloween.
I'd agree.
Halloween week. And that's all we have this week.
Yep.
Next week, no idea.
That's
no
right.
idea at all what's coming
Not
out
yet.
next week.
We'll have to find out.
I'm still curious as to whether Keen Cinemas is going to pull a little rabbit out of their hat with some more horror-type movies.
Right. Well, we know Ouija came out last week.
And Dracula
and they didn't get that.
Untold,
Dracula
or whatever it's
Untold.
called.
Been a while since that one. We may see those. Don't know.
Or, maybe not. Maybe
And
nothing.
if we see them, you'll see them.
Or hear them.
Here, probably.
See
yes.
us talking about
Talk about them. Yes.
To them. Not them in the booth. I mean them on
Right.
TV. Because
Well,
behind this camera, there are people sitting back there
There are.
behind the glass, making obscene gestures. So I guess unless you have any more business,
I'm not going to give you the business, that's for sure.
give me the business over here. Until next week, I'm Mark.
I'm Tom.
And we are
the Cinemaniacs.